It's MonsterVerse, baby.
Following the release of Godzilla King of the Monsters, the MonsterVerse looked like it was entering a world of limitless potential. It seemed that the MonsterVerse was finally achieving its potential as a Toho-styled universe where Godzilla would work alongside Monarch to protect the world from the rampaging monsters. With countless Easter eggs and setups for the future baked into the King of the Monsters end credits roll, fans had a pretty good idea of where things were headed and what we could look forward to. Leading into the release of Godzilla vs. Kong, the comic tie-in Godzilla Dominion promised to tell the story of Godzilla's reign as king. Written by Greg Keyes, the writer of the MonsterVerse novelizations, starting with King of the Monsters onward, and one of the few people making a genuine attempt to keep the universe consistent across all the expanded material. The comic features art by Drew Edward Johnson, returning from Godzilla Aftershock, with Arthur Adams once again providing the cover art. The story begins shortly after the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters, with the Titans still on the loose. Godzilla senses a disturbance in nature's balance while at sea, surfacing to find Scylla battling the Coast Guard as she attempts to feast upon a lost nuclear bomb. Driven by her insatiable hunger, Scylla and Godzilla fight until he throws her into an oil refinery, exploding her and sending her retreating into the ocean. Godzilla, weakened by the events of 2019, heads out in search of a new home. Along the way, he responds to a disturbance in the Amazon, where he finds Behemoth at war with Amalok. Godzilla sides with a wounded Behemoth, causing Amalok to submit after a very brief fight. As Godzilla remembers how much the world has changed over time, he returns to the site of his old temple. While he's appreciative of Serizawa's sacrifice, the temple has been reduced to a crater, its radiation draining into Hollow Earth, leaving it unsuitable for Godzilla's needs. A swarm of murderfish attack Godzilla under the lead of a massive fish that has arrived from Hollow Earth. Godzilla tears its spine out and atomic breaths to the swarm. He then continues his search for a new home, tapping into the planet and feeling the entire ecosystem at once. Godzilla remembers a time when he had a home on an island like Skull Island with the native tribe like the Iwi. He was driven out by his old rival, a Kong powerful enough to defeat him. Godzilla looks to the moon where he realizes his senses have been homed by Mothra, whose spirit is still in him. She guides him back to the rival's island. Along the way, Godzilla discovers a swarm of murdered whales and a downed Monarch sub. He comes upon Nakika, the Kraken Titan trapped in a nest. Godzilla frees him and destroys the submarine responsible, surfacing to find Monarch at war with hostile helicopters and an oil rig being used as the villainous base. Godzilla unleashes his atomic breath, destroying the entire facility. Taking a Hollow Earth tunnel from one side of the planet to the next, Godzilla absorbs enough radiation to feel confident taking on the rival. Trekking across icy lands, green beaches, and lots of ocean, Godzilla finally arrives at the sunken remains of his old island. Titan corpses litter the area, and the old civilization has been lost to sea. Trying to challenge the rival, Godzilla is attacked by Tiamat, who has claimed this area as her territory after being awakened from Stone Mountain in Georgia by Ghidorah. Tiamat puts up a great fight, blinding Godzilla and using her razor-sharp body to both ensnare and slice up the Titan. She creates a whirlpool that sucks them both to Hollow Earth, where they are spit out on land, giving Godzilla the advantage. He seizes the moment by stomping her head and making her submit, fleeing from this territory. Godzilla has arrived, discovering the skull of the rival and the remains of a Hollow Earth civilization he used to live with. From here, Godzilla telepathically calls the Titans around the world to rest, putting an end to the mass awakening. Taking inspiration from the preface of the Godzilla King of the Monsters novelization, this comic is written entirely from Godzilla's perspective. The entire story is told from the Titan's point of view, with narration describing his motivations and feelings. The story never places the reader in the human perspective, with humanity only appearing as small spectators to the broader story. This comic also places the reader directly inside Godzilla's point of view multiple times, showing how he sees the world. Unfortunately, Godzilla Dominion constantly misses the mark. The preface for King of the Monsters worked so well because it was so brief. It gave only a fragment of insight into how Godzilla experiences the world and how his territorial nature supports the theory he's nature's balance. This maintained the sense of mystique around the character vital to making him compelling. Dominion peels those layers back back too much, unraveling the character in the process. By telling the story from Godzilla's perspective, it demystifies him entirely, robbing Godzilla of any nuance or characterization. This comic portrays Godzilla as nothing more than a vessel acting out nature's command. While Serizawa believed that nature had an order and that Godzilla acted to restore that order, it wasn't supposed to be taken this literally. Godzilla attacked the Mutos out of self-preservation. They are a parasitic species that feast upon his kind. As the top of the food chain, Godzilla ensures his survival by battling them. Godzilla's fight with Ghidorah is personal. Ghidorah is a rival alpha seeking to destroy the world at large and kill Godzilla. They have a deep history with each other. Godzilla's actions benefit himself just as much as they do the rest of the planet. King of the Monsters ends by teasing Godzilla will have to undo Ghidorah's mess, battling titans around the world to put them back to sleep or send them somewhere where they won't cause destruction or chaos. Taking away Godzilla's animalistic territorial instincts and replacing them with a divine order from nature causes more issues than it solves. Emma Russell's thesis was proven accurate. The Titans' awakening did help to restore the natural order. If that's what Godzilla wants, why does he force them all to sleep? Why not just break up their grudge matches when they occur? Why didn't he intervene in centuries of humanity's pollution, radiation leaks, environmental damage, or wars? Godzilla only battles Scylla because he's worried the nuke will go off. But wouldn't that feed him and help solve his issue in this comic? And why worry now? What about the decades of bond testings he allowed to go unpunished from humanity? If Godzilla is nothing more than a divine force acting upon nature's orders, then the Titans would be helping, and humanity would be his enemies. Godzilla Dominion tries to tackle some of the ideas from King of the Monsters directly, but expands upon them in ways that strip Godzilla of his samurai-like status, turning him into nothing more than a robot acting upon nature's orders. Godzilla has essentially been robbed of all of his free will, making him an infallible creature that can do no wrong because he's always doing what the planet needs. It makes Godzilla's decisions far less meaningful and undoes the complexity that King of the Monsters portrayed him with. It also complicates Adam Wingard's portrayal of Godzilla that leans far more into the territorial, aggressive, and petty nature of the creature and away from both his noble mission and the idea he's the key to coexistence. This entire comic is unfortunately sloppy. The writing feels self-important and juvenile, often coming across as overly indulgent. Telling a story completely from Godzilla's perspective could be a fantastic idea to explore in a comic. Adding the narration robs it of any nuance or mystery that might have otherwise existed, dumbing it down, demystifying Godzilla, and making things too rigid moving forward. This comic might have worked better had there been no narration at all. Some elements, such as Mothra's influence on Godzilla or his connection to the rival, would have needed reworking, but making the comic exclusively visual would have allowed for interpretations of the material that engaged readers on a deeper level. For a premise as simple as Godzilla searching for a new home after his temple was destroyed, there's still plot beats that are overly convoluted. Godzilla's mystical connection to Mothra has confused many readers into thinking Godzilla gained an ability that connects him to the entire world at once. But Godzilla's always had the ability to sense the whole world, which is seen in both previous movies and stated outright one page before the Mothra vision. This makes the scene very confusing as to what it's implying Godzilla has gained from her spirit other than reassurance in his decision to challenge the rival. The entire rival plotline is unneeded and convoluted. Having an island with natives like the Iwi worshipping a Kong that Godzilla doesn't feel safe return to, but not having it be Skull Island setting up Godzilla vs. Kong is wildly confusing. In fact, this entire plotline does nothing to set up Godzilla vs. Kong in any way other than developing Godzilla's hatred for the Kong species, which is now out of place given that Godzilla only acts out of nature's orders. Revealing a second temple under the island in Hollow Earth comes completely out of nowhere. Godzilla's flashbacks to the past are of the island on the surface world, not a temple beneath it, which is now stated to be his original temple. This is a useless development. Godzilla already had a temple in the previous movie with a rich history implied with it. This muddies that timeline and robs that temple of its original significance. It also raises questions as to why Godzilla doesn't return to his temple in the following films. Tiamat's introduction is fantastic, with the kaiju making a bold impression right away, but even that storyline has confused many readers. With the writer and artist of this comic making bold claims that aren't supported by the book itself, Tiamat's connection to the rival isn't clear. The comic seems to imply she killed the rival, who was too old to defend himself at this point, backed up by out-of-comic statements from the creatives. But this creates a confusing timeline, as Tiamat was sleeping in the US until shortly before this comic started, and yet the rival has already decayed to be nothing but a skull. The most frustrating part of this entire experience is how quickly it resolves the conflict post King of the Monsters. Within one single panel, Godzilla uses a new telepathic ability that has never been hinted to before to call all the titans around the world to rest. Is this the ability he gained from Mothra? It's never stated. What made Ghidorah so menacing was that he had the ability to create a mass awakening, summoning every titan from around the world to rise at once. Ghidorah accomplished this because he's not part of the natural order and is an alien with powers not even Godzilla can match up to. Giving Godzilla this ability, it's just too easy. It dismantles the potential for where this universe was heading. Godzilla's fight with the titans was resolved in just a few weeks because he did a big think so big they got sleepy. Godzilla Dominion is the unfortunate victim of the MonsterVerse's changing priorities. As the universe made an abrupt pivot away from Michael Dougherty's story, the world building of the previous film was quickly covered up. The credits montage from King of the Monsters was supposed to set up where this universe was heading. Originally, Godzilla and Monarch were busy with titans rampaging across the globe. Monarch would summon the titans to Hollow Earth through a portal on Skull Island using a device called the Orca Z, building upon the themes of King of the Monsters, disrupting the balance of nature on the island and forcing Godzilla and Kong into a collision course with each other. These plot elements were completely dropped, killing almost the entire setup for where this universe would go. Even if these ideas would have overcrowded Godzilla vs. Kong, making the movie too plot-driven, they still could have been references for where the story would go after that movie. Instead, they were abruptly rushed through and wrapped up in the shortest MonsterVerse comic to date. Godzilla Dominion is a super mixed bag. While the plot writing is solid with fantastic scenes, such as Godzilla reflecting upon Serizawa and Mothra, the narration is childish, fitting in better with your standard Godzilla fanfiction than the actual MonsterVerse. The narration style was proven in the King of the Monsters novelization, where it gave Godzilla a certain nobility, but utilized this heavily, it unmasks Godzilla too much and destroys the subtlety of his character by taking away the ability to read into his actions or interpret his motives on your own. Much like with Godzilla Aftershock, Johnson continues to borrow his posing and modeling for Godzilla too directly from the films, toys, and other media, keeping Godzilla just as stiff as he was before. Some of Godzilla's posing is so clearly borrowed from things outside of the MonsterVerse that Godzilla sometimes looks more like his 1998 iteration than his 2019 one. The reuse of poses makes this comic feel cheap and the action feel copy and pasted. Other things like forgetting to draw Nakika's shell, drawing Scylla to look more crab than spider, with her tentacles now looking very different than the film, and pretty much everything going on with Amalok hold the artwork back even more. Even with all of this, the story has fantastic ideas. Godzilla being stuck between his want for a new home and his need to protect the planet could be the basis for one of his best stories ever told. Furthering the conflict between Godzilla and Scylla, seeing Godzilla perform heroic actions like saving Behemoth and Nakika, and introducing one of the MonsterVerse's best titans in the form of Tiamat, Godzilla Dominion has so much going for it. The comic features great action with wonderful ideas constantly being introduced. It makes more than its fair share of missteps, but still manages to be filled with that classic Godzilla energy. With the films all but abandoning the plot threads set up by Godzilla King of the Monsters, fans such as myself must take solace in this story, as it's the only time we've ever seen the world of that movie developed in an immediate and consequential way. It's also because of that decision to abandon those plot threads that Godzilla Dominion will seemingly forever be a symbol of the lost potential the MonsterVerse has suffered after the 2019 film. For all of those reasons, I would only recommend Godzilla Dominion to hardcore MonsterVerse fans, hardcore Godzilla fans, and general monster fans who are on the younger side. I believe this comic works best as an introduction to this universe for younger readers who are looking for more spectacle than story and who don't mind the shifting priorities of the cinematic universe at large. Thank you so much for watching another episode of MonsterVerse May. I really appreciate it. If you want to see all upcoming episodes of MonsterVerse May early, get access to the Discord community, and more, please consider supporting the channel using the Patreon linked in the description below. Supporting the Patreon is the most direct way to support this channel and makes sure that I can continue to make videos like this for you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.